in the office, he would always be consulted with to give us that opinion.
Am I correct that when the story broke with respect to Mr. Petersen, you were actually in London?
That's correct.
And was that a county-related trip?
I'm serving as the president of the International Association of Assessing Officers for 2019. I was there to represent Maricopa County, the association, and actually, because of this incident, I had to come back home, but I was also going to represent the United States of America at a Tagova conference in Bulgaria. So I missed that to come back here immediately. I told the chairman and the board, you know, that's why it's 4 a.m. email. I took a 3.5-hour Uber ride at 6 o'clock in the morning from Wales to get back to London to come back and serve, because I knew that is what the assessor and this board would require of me.
Thank you for that. Did Mr. Petersen give any advanced warning before he went into custody that this was going to happen? Did he tell you that he expected it and how he can be reached?
No, sir.
To your knowledge, other than the 2 short phone calls you had with Mr. Petersen while he was incarcerated, did anybody else from the county assessor's office communicate with him, or did he communicate with them in any way?
I'm not aware of that.
Would you view Mr. Petersen's position as a leadership position?
Absolutely.
Do you believe it's his duty to lead the county assessor's office?
He has.
Does that include leadership by example?
Yes.
So whether policies apply only to employees rather than elected officials aside, would you expect Mr. Petersen to honor policies that govern employees with respect to, for example, computer use or technology use?
I was shocked when the initial internal audit report, as our staff and many of you were, that those documents were there.
Do you think Mr. Petersen was leading by example when he effectively disappeared on October 8th?
Chairman Gates, I have to object. If that's within the statement of charges, it's a surprise to me.
Again, your objection is noted for the record.
And let me make it more clear. Do you think that Mr. Petersen was leading by example when he was gone from office, incarcerated, with no communication with you, his deputy?
Point of order, Chairman. It's unclear to me whether the questions are being asked as a prosecutor, as a judge, or as counsel to an ostensibly neutral body.
The questions are being asked as counsel to the board, and if you have objections to the questions, you can certainly note those for the record, as you have done.
And again, do you think it's leading by example when Mr. Petersen is absent for 3 weeks and makes only 2 communications with his office without any means of getting a hold of him?
I would say at his first opportunity to call, he did. I have no knowledge of, you know, what it was like to be in the Maricopa County Detention Center or the federal penitentiary, but the man reached out and, you know, gave instructions as soon as he could.
Do you think Mr. Petersen was leading by example when he used county technology to store copious documents with respect to his adoption business?
Same objection,
and
Mr.
his
Chair.
legal practice, including personal health information of third parties?
The question of whether he's leading by example is irrelevant to the scope of these proceedings as you've defined them.
That objection is noted for the record. Mr. Dorn, I'm sure you understand Mr. Langhofer's argument that he's making.
I do indeed, and thank you for that. The question was simply, do you think Mr. Petersen was leading by example when he used county technology and resources to include on the system things like personal health information of third parties in running his business?
I was not aware of that. until that report came out.
And what is your view of it now?
Mr. Chairman, I have to object. His view of the facts is not relevant. His knowledge of the facts is.
Again, your objection is noted for the record.
Yeah, I'll also point out, let me object on this basis. We're apparently being excluded from presenting evidence that's outside the scope of these proceedings as you defined it, but that rule appears to only apply one way.
I would disagree with that, Mr. Langhofer. I think this relates specifically to the two bases upon which this board acted.
And we've gone around a little bit, so let me try again.
Okay.
Do you believe now, knowing what you've seen in the Stein report, that Mr. Petersen was leading by example when he was using county technology and other assets to run his personal for-profit businesses, including putting onto the system personal health information of third parties and other highly confidential information?
You know, again, I don't know what's on his computer. All I know is that when he came to the office, we talked about office business. You know, there was no indication of running an adoption business. There wasn't clients sitting in the lobby, okay? So I don't know what was on the man's computer, okay? And as far as I know, and as far as running the office, he did it effectively, and he gave us direction each and every day.
Just to clarify, it was important for you to receive direction from him each and every day, right?
Only when needed.
Objection, it
Only when it
mischaracterizes
needed.
testimony.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When it was needed, yes.
Sure. And during the time of incarceration, he was only available to you twice, correct?
Asked and answered.
Yes.
That's all I have for you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Langhofer, did you have anything else for this witness?
I do have one question, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bunkowski, let's be clear about this. If Paul had not been confined and he showed up for that Mars meeting, would the rollout date for the Mars project be any different?
Nope, would have been the same as we talked about on Monday.
No more questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Langhofer. Just one thing for everyone. We appreciate that everyone's here. This is an open meeting, but this is a very important matter that we're handling here. So if we can please try and keep the any emotional outbursts to ourselves. Again, I appreciate this is a very important meeting. As we mentioned previously, we were going to take a break every hour or so. We're now an hour into the proceeding, so we will take a short break, and we will recess at this point and return in 10 or so minutes. Thank you very much. Oh, and I'm sorry, my apologies. Mr. Bonkowski, you may leave now. Thank you very much
Mr.
for your
Chairman.
testimony today. I appreciate it. All right, we're back in session now with the hearing with regard to Paul Peterson's suspension. Just one comment was made, one thing that I wanted to clarify. Mr. Langhofer, you were referring in your opening statement to the findings with respect to documents on Mr. Peterson's computer being outside of the realm of county business, and you referred to the numbers, the percentages being very different in the Mitchell-Stein report as opposed to the initial audit. I did just want to get clear, I don't want to get into a debate with you on it, but the denominator is significantly larger with the Mitchell-Stein report. Would you agree with that?
I think that explains the discrepancy. Yes.
Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for, I just want to make sure that that was clear for the record. And with that, you're free to call any other witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We call Russell Pierce.
Mr. Pierce, if you can please, thank you for joining us today. Good to see you. If you can please walk over to our board, clerk of the board, Fran McCarroll, and she will administer the oath.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help me God, I do.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Pierce, please have a seat next to Mr. Langhofer. And as I mentioned to Mr. Bonkowski, again, this meeting is being recorded, so if we can just make sure that we, or at least try not to talk on top of one another. And again, if you ever have any kind of a shaking your head yes or no, or a something like that, I might just politely, hopefully, interrupt just to clarify whether that's a yes or no.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks so much. Mr. Langhofer, your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pierce, I believe we met for the first time just earlier this afternoon, correct?
That's correct.
And I've never had a chance to speak to you before then. Is that fair?
You have not.
I understand, Mr. Pierce, that you have a view on the propriety of this suspension proceeding. Is that right?
Well, I do. Not that it matters, I guess, but I do. I believe the board probably had reasonable cause when Paul was incarcerated. But as testified by his chief deputy, it seems to have not been a problem in terms of running the office. But I understand the statute. I've looked at it. I understand that they probably could have acted properly at that point. But I think once he's been released and capable of running his office, an elected constitutional office by the people that sent him there, he has the right to perform those duties.
Mr. Pierce, you work for the Treasurer's Office, is that right?
I do, yes, sir.
And does the Treasurer's Office work closely with the Assessor's Office?
Very closely.
Is there another elected office in the county that works closer with the Assessor's Office than the Treasurer's Office?
Not that I'm aware of.
Have you observed any statutory duties not being performed in the Assessor's Office?
We've never had a problem. I have to admit, very candidly, we've had a great relationship with the assessor in his office. We've never not had a response in an appropriate, timely manner from him. And I'll go as far as to say the only time we had any problem was after the suspension on an issue we were working on that was kind of dropped by I assume staff or somebody, you know, inappropriately, but that was rectified by his chief deputy when we got a hold of him, and so that was short-lived.
What about during his 20 days of confinement? Did you have any trouble then?
We did not. We were very close with this office, and they were very, very responsive.
No more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dorn, do you have any questions for Mr. Pierce?
I do not.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Pierce. You're certainly free to remain here, but we appreciate you coming and testifying.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, board members.
Mr. Langhofer, do you have any other witnesses to call at this time?
No, Mr. Chairman. No, Mr. Chairman, I think we're going to wrap things up. There was an issue that I meant to speak about during my opening statement that I skipped in my notes. It's brief, and so I'll cover that.
Please proceed.
It's the issue, one of the four issues. It's not within the statement of charges, but it's one of the issues raised in the Mitchell-Stein-Carey report. And that was the idea that because Paul did not promptly tender his laptop to the investigators, maybe that's neglect of duty. Our view on that is this. First of all, he was under no obligation to tender his laptop. As Mr. Dorn pointed out, he's never actually been terminated. He's still the county assessor. In fact, I think I was looking at minutes from one of your very recent meetings, like maybe late last week, and he's still on your letterhead as the county assessor. He's just suspended at the moment. And until he's no longer with the county, he has a right to keep the laptop. That said, so he had no obligation to tender it. Therefore, it can't be neglect of duty, statutorily at least. That said, we were willing to give it over. I think they'd emailed us like on the Monday before Thanksgiving, and then Paul had mailed to me the laptop, and this is in an email exchange. It's in the exhibits to the Mitchelstein Carey report. And I got it the following Monday, and then I was out of town on Tuesday, but I was going to have them come to our office to pick it up. They served a warrant that Monday, or I think the Tuesday morning that I was flying out. After we told them we were going to tender the laptop, I mean, 1 week delay, we said it was coming, it was going to be in their hands that afternoon. This can't possibly be a basis for suspending a constitutional officer. We told them we were going to give it to them, we were going to. Look, with that said, that's the one issue I'd skipped in my notes. I will say this delicately. We wanted to suspend disbelief about whether a proceeding like this would be productive. And I do not believe that the participation of someone in a role like Mr. Doran makes further witnesses a productive use of our time or yours. We have, you know what, let me stop there. I've got other things to say, but there's no need to poke each other in the eye. I think we've presented our case. You have our arguments. If the principals have questions, I would be happy to answer them, but there's no need for me to give you a litany of complaints. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Langhofer? No, please proceed.
I think we're going to leave it there, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to just go over sort of some housekeeping and just to help manage expectations for folks. I think everyone understands that this is a preliminary report that we received from Mitchelstein. So we want to, as a board, we're not going to decide today. We are looking for any final report that may have an impact on our decision, again, on the request to rescind the suspension. As well, we do have, you mentioned, Mr. Petersen's laptop that is in the custody of the Arizona Attorney General. We want to make sure that there isn't anything else on that we should consider as part of our decision. So I just wanted to sort of, people would understand what the timing might be on this. Obviously, we understand a lot of people want to know our decision as soon as possible, and we will certainly reach that point as soon as we can, again, considering any additional information that we might receive. In that vein, Mr. Langhofer, as counsel to Mr. Petersen, if there's anything else that you would like us to consider, if you want to provide that in writing, happy to consider that. So I just wanted to make that offer if there's any additional information as we move forward with the process. Any questions? Mr. Langhofer, do you have any questions for us?
No, Mr. Chairman, we'll follow up if we do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to everyone for attending today. We appreciate your time, and this meeting is adjourned.
Go back. Yeah.